はい。バンケットより後方。スピーチあと一人で乾杯に入ります。準備で。
後方 OK です。内部全然聞こえないんで、スピーチが終わるタイミングでコールをお願いします。
いいかい。各宅にビールは10本ずつだよ。ちゃんと自分の縄張りにスムーズに運んでね。
Young waiters with bow ties got bottles of beer ready for a toast. Okay. There are several dozen tables with white tablecloths on them in the banquet room. Approximately 8 people are sitting at each table, so there are at least a few hundred people there. The banquet room is teeming with excitement. There are many plates with different kinds of food on each table. A sushi platter, a sashimi platter, a flute platter. Also, along the wall, there are cooks ready to serve fresh sauce. Also, along the wall, there are cooks ready to serve fresh sashimi. Serve fresh sashimi. Serve fresh sashimi. Is that like a tongue twister? Serve fresh sashimi. Serve fresh sashimi. Serve fresh sashimi. It's a little bit difficult, I guess. All the guests appear to be well-mannered gentlemen, and obviously, they are notable people from different fields. The huge and beautiful chandelier above them clearly tells that this hotel holds a status good enough for those famous people. Okay, well, what is this about? Obviously, it seems to me like a meeting where Takano would take part in. Probably something along the lines of... An elderly gentleman is giving a long speech on the stage before making a toast. Usually, people don't like such long speeches, especially if it's before a toast. I feel an odd sense of deja vu. Isn't this like one of those segments from Takano's backstory, like at the beginning of the chapter, where yeah, it was like a meeting of like community college like people, well, community college, people from like different kinds of colleges that they graduated, talking about something political, I think it was. Yeah. And then afterwards, we had that talk with Takano and Koizumi in his office. Is this? Nah, it can't be the same. Like, that would be like long in the past, I think. Yeah, but the guests are actually excited with his speech. Well, maybe fervor was a pleasant way to put it. It was probably more accurate to say their excitement was bizarre. Anyway, Japan accepted the demand for unconditional surrender. And the day they did, the Pacific War ended. In other words, even if they had to take care of further business, the war ended that day according to international law. And from that day on, there was a peace. Therefore, if any troops invaded Japanese land during that peace, there will be an encroachment against Japan! No matter what the Soviet Union says, the northern territories are Japanese land, and it should be clear to everyone that they are invaded illegally. Yeah, I guess it makes sense that they wouldn't voice this. Here, here! And now they want to settle by returning a mere 2 islands to us? Who do you think they're kidding? Listen, Habomai, Shikotan, Kunashir, and Iturup are Japanese territory. Their total area is equal to an entire prefecture. What would you think if the Soviets invaded and occupied any of our prefectures? Would you settle for just getting half of the prefecture back? No, you wouldn't! You have the entirety returned to you! Yet the Soviets are brazenly sitting there claiming vested rights to the land. This is no joke. We must strongly oppose this to the bitter end. Return all the northern islands. Our nation must demonstrate unwavering resolve on that point. Thunderous applause filled the banquet room. All the gentlemen agreed and expressed that they felt the same way by cheering him on. In all that hubbub, there were 2 people standing by the wall who didn't seem to fit in with the rest. They were wearing sharp-looking suits, and while a little too old to be called young men, were certainly young compared to all the elite gentlemen in the banquet room.
どうして政治家ってこう説教臭いというか若者軽視というかこう偏るんでしょうね。簡単なことさ。
Wait, is this the future? Again?
政治家が一番欲しいのは票だ。票は有権者が投じる。だが20歳以上が全員投票するわけじゃない。 投票率のほとんどは退職して時間にゆとりがあり、その分政治に関心の高い高齢者が占めている。となれば高齢者層をいかに取り込むかというのが選挙のポイントになるわけですね。
The war only happened 40 years ago. In other words, the generation that's interested in voting is the generation from before the war.
うちのおふくろ、よく空襲の話をします。昔は水道橋のあたりに住んでて、空襲で家族を全員失って焼け野原を一人さまよったなんて話をいつも。そうさ。
Our parents went through the war. They shed their blood, sweat, and tears, believing it was for the good of the nation. Man, you know, 1980s Japan is surely interesting to me. And I'm not saying just because some of my favorite games take place in it, like Yakuza 0, Shenmue, and also this, and Umineko as well. But also because of the stuff that's happening in the 1980s and such. Like near the end of the 80s we had like the economical bubble exploding and such and all of that. But as I'm realizing right now, the 80s is kind of like the threshold between the new generation and the old generation when it comes to those affected by the war or not. We are from 80s onwards, we are now going we're going past that in a way that we have new generations that have never experienced war and thus will not have the same feelings as those who have experienced war. So it's kind of interesting that, and that that has been talked about plenty throughout this chapter and such, about those who give a fuck and those who do not. We lost the war, but they believe the war still brought about change that serves as a foundation for the peace we have today. I hear that a lot. That if Japan hadn't fought in the war, the Asian countries would still be Western colonies. There was no way we could have won, but we needed to fight in that war, or something like that. In that case, no matter how much they preach pacifism, politicians can't ignore the pre-war generation. War is bad, and we should never again fight a war. But that war was necessary. Unless they say things like that, it's like they're denying the very lives that generations lived.
なるほど。政治家も票を取るのに大変なんですね。そういう主義主張も本心でしているなら一意見の主張として立派だと思う。だが彼らの票が欲しくて表向きだけ調子を合わせてる卑劣な政治家もいる。そういう迎合的な政治家が後を絶たない限り解雇主義は永遠に終わらないのさ。
Man, you know, if censorship like this is prominent in chapter 8 in the sense that, well, they're not gonna censor text when it comes to war, but they're not gonna voice this sort of stuff. That's the line that they're gonna draw at. If they're not gonna voice this sort of stuff as part of censorship, how are you gonna censor Seconia, since I've heard that the story is gonna have stuff to do with the war related topics and such?
そうして若者とお年寄りの意識の格差は多分1000年経っても相変わらず。
They'll just keep repeating that the war was justified, yet regrettable every time an election takes place. When will our country ever be freed from that cycle?
簡単さ。若者がちゃんと選挙に行け。そして安易な迎合にごまかされずちゃんと政策を考えてるやつに投票しろ。実現可能な政策だぞ。ああ、いますね。明らかに実現不可能な公約を掲げてる候補者っています。あ、赤塚さん、F 択ってあれじゃないですか。あのご婦人だな。行くぞ。
The speech had ended and the elderly gentlemen were giving the man on the stage a standing ovation. The two men walked through the crowd and approached an old lady in a kimono.
はい、私ですけれども、どちら様ですか？
昨日お電話で約束させていただきましたものです。 赤坂と申します。
Okay.
主人はね、ずっと日本のためにと身を粉にして働いてきたんですのよ。それなのに
奥さんの胸中、深くお察しします。
This wasn't really anything out of the ordinary. Nobody could remember if there had been a donation or not. So a handful of politicians were questioned. As a result, some came up with a scheme to blame a sickly elderly man who had already retired. With only a short time to live anyway, he was the perfect fit for them. The elderly man had already been sick in bed, and the shock of his friends betraying him had taken away his will to live. The only thing his wife could do was to simply watch him suffer. She kept crying while telling the man about her husband's achievements.
ご主人の無実が間違いなければ、必ずや裁判官は正義の判決を下すでしょう。大丈夫です。濡れ衣は必ず晴らせます。
そんなのは分かっています。だって無実なんですから。でもね、判決が出るまで主人は持たないんです。お国のためにとあれだけ働いてきて、こんな気持ちで死ねなんてあんまりじゃないですか。あれじゃあ死んでも死にきれません。
Kasaka nodded and tried to find the right words to say to her. His colleague rummaged through a pile of paperwork behind him. The papers were filled with fine print, and it would be hard for an onlooker to tell exactly what they were. However, the way he was looking at them made it very clear that they contained something important.
赤坂さん、こいつはすごい資料です。金の動きが完全に網羅されてます。
Akasaka gave him a signal to remind him that this wasn't the place to be looking through those documents.
奥さん、この他には書類束のようなものはありませんね。
ええ、主人の金庫に入っていた文書はそれで全てです。どうかそれで恩知らずな連中に一泡吹かせてやってください。あれだけ主人に世話になっておきながら。
奥さん、この文章の内容には一部ご主人にとって不利益な内容も含まれていますが、それは。
ええ、それは分かっています。政治はね、きれい事だけじゃないんです。私だって政治家の妻ですのよ。
ご協力を感謝します。この書類は必ず巨大な不正を暴くために使用します。
一つだけよろしいですか。それを公表するのは主人が亡くなるまで待ってもらえませんか。
The paperwork Akasaka received was something her husband intended to take to the grave with him. I guess so. Some justice to be done for him so that the money aren't stolen, because the money were stolen, so we want to make it right. But at the same time, that would imply that we have to release some of the dirty stuff that he has done as a politician, I guess. Yeah. Something that shouldn't exist in this world. If it went public, her husband's name would be disgraced. Akasaka nodded.
わかりました。誓ってお約束します。
Vast public funds were moving from Kasumigaseki. The funds were issued to sub-branches to carry out national policies. Were issued to sub-branches to carry out national policies. But various ideas over those public funds always came together, and there was never an end to those trying to poke a straw into it to suck it out like a mosquito. Excess dividends, cordial patronage, profits for organizations that benefited themselves. Many financiers financiers? What is that word? I mean, obviously it has to do with finances, but I think that's the first time I'm hearing this word. Financiers? Approach and adhere to officials. I guess people that do finances, I guess, I don't know. And adhere to officials and politicians hoping to earn those gains. And the bureaucrats constantly indulge them. That's how Japanese corruption works. Let's see. Okay. These illegal pipes form bypass. After bypassing Kasumi Gaseki, siphoning off public funds for their profit. To find and destroy such pipes is, of course, in the national interest. By eliminating illegal expenditures isn't as simple as all that. There are important people connected to those pipes, and when those people are investigated, a major political scandal takes place. The reason why the government doesn't investigate such illegal expenditures is only to protect vested interests, but also because they are conscious of the damage these scandals can cause politically. To put it more succinctly, the government can't endure the pain of pushing puss out of a wound. The closer the exposed subject is to the top, the greater the pain faced by the government, and it affects the cabinet approval rating. Trying my best to understand this. But what I'm understanding right over here is that basically, like, public funds are being taken away. Like, money is being taken away, even from innocent people for, like, illegal stuff. And Akasaka is trying to stop this. Man, Akasaka is even dealing with this sort of stuff? No, I guess it makes sense, honestly. Like, for what happened to Hinamizawa and all the stuff that we've learned with Takano in this chapter and all the background stuff, like with Tokyo and such, I guess it makes sense that Akasaka would reach this far in his career to the point where he's dealing with this sort of stuff. I mean, he did deal with a politician, with a corrupt politician in that one mission from before that we've seen, where he punched the wall, like near the politician like 7 times and all that. He is dealing with corrupt organizations, that's for sure. And this is an example, which is important. I feel like this is going to be very important for Akasaka in order to stop the destruction of Hinamizawa. Like, it's not going to be just the people in Hinamizawa, located in Hinamizawa at the time of the destruction, like the SDF and Takano and all that, but some stuff in the background. The secret investigation Akasaka was leading went as close to the heart as it got. It could cause a collapse of the administration from a shock. Akasaka was tipped off that a huge amount of public fund was leaking out through an alumni organization. Alumni organization, that's what I was thinking of. Like an alumni organization meetup, like in the early part of the chapter. Of the 7 imperial universities, yeah! So he and his colleagues had been conducting a secret investigation into the matter for a long time. Okay. His target was tightly knit. But he learned the wife of one of the organization's senior members bore strong resentment toward them after her husband was made their scapegoat, and he managed to contact her. Oh, I see. So the husband was part of like these schemes. That's like the dirty stuff that he wanted to take to his grave. But yeah, he was taken advantage of. He was made the scapegoat and taken money from him as well. So we want to make it right by him, but at the same time, he's literally going to be seen as one of the people that took part in the scheme as well. So, and because of that, he had gotten his hands on extremely important information.
特に赤坂くんが入手した資料は相当ショッキングなものだよ。随分苦労したでしょう。お疲れさん。ああ、いえ。
The small meeting room was filled with boxes that were, in turn, filled with documents. The whiteboard was filled with cramped writing too. A few of the investigators in the meeting room, which was also filled with smoke, were reading the documents intensely. Their intimidating manner clearly indicated that they were police officers with a great deal of experience. Akasaka was one of those men. It had been a while since Mamoru Akasaka was transferred to this department. When he worked on the case of the kidnapping of Minister Inukai's grandson, he had been a rookie, but by now he was an experienced investigator. After a knock on the door, an elderly man entered the room. Everyone straightened up all at once. Oh?
室長、お疲れ様です。
お疲れさん。立たなくていい。楽にしてくれ。諸君に今日は素晴らしいプレゼントを持ってきたぞ。カノ、お前を息子の授業参観に行かせてやる。
Hey, that's nice. The meeting room was filled with sighs, tinged with exasperation and resignation. It certainly wasn't because any of them hated getting to go to Parents' Day. Well, why?
やっぱりな。そろそろ頃合いだと思ってたんですよ。くそ。
Akasaka's colleague complained. They had been so close to getting to the root of this issue. They had such strong evidence. Akasaka, on his part, wasn't too disturbed. And this had happened several times in the past. And considering how hot the documents he obtained were, it was easy enough to predict. What? The case was suddenly transferred to another department. That meant their investigation ended here. No. The new department was supposed to continue the investigation to expose injustices, but that's never happened once before. It was just an excuse. Yeah, I guess so. Some people were paid so that this sort of investigation stopped. The investigation had been terminated because of pressure from above.
くそったね。俺たちが今日まで捜査してきたのは何のためだったんでしょうかね。
海を出す痛みがどの程度か測るためだろうな。その結果、痛みに耐えられない規模だということが分かり、荒領事を断念したってことだろう。
In that sense, their hard work wasn't wasted. Because of it, the investigation was terminated. Akasaka understood that, but his colleague wasn't yet mature enough to understand. Of course, Akasaka's sense of justice was displeased by this. He felt frustrated with his superiors, who had hesitated to expose the truth. But he was mature enough to know not to say that out loud.
資料の整理と引き継ぎについては今後向こうと調整していく。とりあえずみんな長く休んでないだろう。5時を待たなくていいぞ。引き上げて体を休めてくれ。残務整理は明日話し合い。あと振り替え休暇の消化をしよう。ちゃんと消化して神さん孝行しろよ。主査は俺と来てくれ。以上だ。
Yes, sir. Though his long, secret investigation left a bad taste in his mouth with his resolution, he managed to earn a holiday until the next incident arrived.
じゃ、室長のお言葉に甘えますかね。
I guess.
みんな、今日は早く帰って休みな。
こういう時、早帰りすると不倫の現場に出くわしたりしちゃうんですよね。
No. At the very least, we know that this investigation that they're working on doesn't have like anything to do with Hinamizawa. Otherwise, Akasaka would have been pissed about this, and he would have continued the investigation nonetheless, either by himself or some other people, like in secret. That, or maybe we're gonna find out like after this that Akasaka indeed is gonna investigate in secret, in which case it has something to do with Hinamizawa. But if not, then yeah, this is the end. And job well done, Akasaka. You can go home to your wife. Sorry.
バカだな。お前知らないだろう。赤坂さんとこは熱愛夫婦だぞ。毎晩別当の公衆電話からラブコールかけてるの知らないのかよ。
赤坂んところはいいよな。うちの女房なんてそりゃそっけないもんだよ。
Oh, wait, hold on a second. Oh yeah, hold on a second. Wasn't it... When was this said? Oh god, I hope that I'm not pulling this out of my ass right over here. I think it was said at some point that that at some point Akasaka did manage to come back home early and save his wife. So this is one of the this is one of the good fragments for Akasaka. Huh. Akasaka smiled bitterly as he gathered the documents in his hands. One of the pages fell to the floor. It was a page from a huge pile of papers documenting illegal expenditures. They exposed the illegal expenditures of the Alphabet Project, the research team for the next generation of hardware in the defense agency. So, bottom line, I guess the wife is alive in this. It was entirely possible that this project was created in the first place for the purpose of funneling these illegal expenditures. When he saw the paper, one thing caught Akasaka's eye. He picked it up, looked at it, and tried to remember. It was a list of people who illegally received public funds. It was also a list of retirees who were still very much in love with money. And there should have been no connection between those people and Akasaka. However, there was one thing that caught his attention. Oh? Okay, well, plot twist. I guess this investigation does have something to do with Hinamizawa at this point. So Akasaka is gonna continue this. As soon as he said it all sorts of memories resurfaced. Yes, the Ariakey clinic. When he was working on the case of Minister Inukai's grandson abduction, he got into a scuffle with the suspects and became injured. He was taken to the local clinic. As he recalled, the name of that clinic was the Ariakey Clinic. He started to remember one thing after another. His very first experience was with wadding into the muck. It was pointed to his mind like a fresh memory, and he could vividly recall everything that happened. His daughter was about to be born, and he really didn't want to go to Hinamizawa. He met Oishi, who taught him a lot of important things. He also met a girl in that village. Her name was... yes... Rika Furude. That was it. How long had it been? How old was she now? As he remembered her lovely smile, he also remembered the ominous prediction she made. She had predicted that if he didn't go back to Tokyo, something terrible would happen. At the time, he took it as nonsense, but he felt something odd about it, as if it was a divine omen. Then, he had remembered Yukie, who was about to give birth. He became concerned that something terrible would happen to her, but he couldn't just leave and go back to Tokyo. And that's why he called her right away. He told her something would happen. He told her to be very careful until he returned. Yukie had left and told him he was being paranoid. But that phone call indeed saved her from a calamity. Okay, so yeah, in this particular fragment, in this timeline, Yukie was saved. Akasaka had found out about that when he visited her after returning to Tokyo. A few days after his phone call, A janitor was seriously injured when he stepped on a loose towel on the stairs on his way to the rooftop. Was it during chapter 7 when we saw Akasaka come back to Hinamizawa? Like during that mahjong tile game that we had at like the toy store? Was it then that we found out that Akasaka's wife was alive in that one? Yeah, cause like one of the points of Akasaka coming back to Hinamizawa was to have like a vacation with his wife. I think. Yeah, I think I remember now. That's why Akasaka came to Hinamizawa at that point. Although I was thinking that he would come back to Hinamizawa in order to help Rika, but apparently not at the time. But let's hope that this time it's gonna be different. He also heard afterwards that Yuki had a habit of going to the roof for a walk every day. But because of his phone call, she had stopped doing it. If he hadn't called her, she would have been the one to step on the loose towel. In other words, Rika Furuda's prediction had been correct. There was no proof, but Akasaka still believed that he was able to save Yuki only because of Rika Furuda's prediction. He'd intended to call and thank her for saving Yuki, but the busy days that followed put it out of his mind. Rika-chan. He wondered if she was still doing well, if she was still smiling. Akasaka remembered the sad prediction she made on that night under the moon, while still wearing that smile. That's right. She'd said something. She predicted someone would get killed on the night of the festival every year, and that on the 5th year in, she'd be the one to be killed. That's right, he thought. She did say that. The 5th year. That's this year. Okay, so... yeah. Now we are in present time, like before the disaster. Okay then. So I guess this is the best of both worlds. We've seen, like, Akasaka is not a rookie, and we've seen glimpses of Akasaka from future, where he is like Superman and managed to defeat that gang. Like in that one fragment we've seen. So now we're in present time. If you remembered correctly, it happens on the last Sunday of the month. Akasaka looked at the calendar. It was June 1983. Although there was still some time, the death she predicted for herself was coming up. The girl who predicted Yuki's accident also prophesied a mysterious incident would occur annually for the next 5 years. If it had actually been happening, then it would happen again this year. Akasaka wondered if Oishi was still at the Okinomiya PD. If the annual incident she predicted actually was taking place, he would know. In other words, he could confirm if Rika Furuda was going to be killed or not with a phone call to Oishi. The girl who predicted her own death had muttered that she didn't want to die. Muttered? No. It was clearly a plea for help. The young girl who was trapped in the fathomless, bizarre traditions of a village she couldn't escape had sought help from him, an outsider. She paid his reward in advance, in the form of foreseeing Yuki's accident. He had to get to her. He had to go save her. A flood of emotions filled him up. He felt as though he had finally remembered something he was never supposed to forget. That's right. He had to go to Hinamizawa. He had to save the girl who asked him for help. Alright then. Well, it is a good thing that Akasaka has caught on that, like, before the disaster. Like, usually, you'd be like right after the disaster.
すみません。そちらの刑事課に現在も大石クラウド氏は在籍されておりますでしょうか。もしもいらっしゃったならお願いしたいのですが。
失礼ですが、 どちら様でしょうか。
警視庁の赤坂とお伝えください。
Oishi was a very lovely person, but he had been old even back then. Maybe he had already transferred to someone else. Or maybe he'd since retired. Well, luckily he isn't yet. But if he was still there, he'd be happy to hear from Akasaka. He sure had a unique laugh.
おいさん、外線からお電話です。東京の警視庁からですよ。
東京？そりゃまた遠くからはるばるどちら様ですかね。はい、もしもし、大石です。え？こりゃ懐かしい。どうです、お元気にしてましたか？な
Alrighty then. Preparing the ground for Akasaka and Oishi to do their justice and to help the kids in Hinamizawa. We're preparing the ground for that. That's nice. Alrighty then. New tips? No tips. No tips this chapter. Hanyu has already grown used to being around us. Since Rika-chan and Satoko are her age, she's become especially close with them. Of course, Rena and Miona are looking after her too. Rena told me something that day Hanyu joined the class. She said that Hanyu has been close to us for a long time, and that she's been watching us play, that she always wanted to join us. I still can't remember seeing her before. Somehow, I can believe it. Hanyu has accepted all the things that surprised me at first, as if she knew about them all along. Yeah, she knows everything about us. And since she's truly excited about finally being able to join in. Now, of course, in a realistic sense, you could think that, oh, it must be that Hanyu has been talking with Rika a lot, like, before joining school, and she would know. But this is kind of laying the ground for the kids, eventually learning that Hanyu has been with them like this entire time, in a spiritual level, that is.
羽生もすっかり僕たちの仲間に溶け込みましたのです。
だな。なんだかずっと前からそうだったように感じるよ。そんなはずはないのにな。
そんなことありませんです。ずっと僕たちのそばにいましたですよ。
あれ、リカちゃんもそんなこと言うんだな。レナも言ってたよ。俺だけが気づいてなかったのかな。
圭一は鈍感だからきっと気づかなかったに違いないのです。
Damn.
みー。
Oh, typical density of a motherfucking protagonist.
どうせ俺は鈍感ですよだ。
MP, motherfucking protagonist, I guess. MPD, motherfucking protagonist density.
リカと圭一が座り込んでいますのです。疲れましたですか？羽生が疲れ知らずなだけなのです。僕たちは遊びすぎてヘトヘトなのですよ。だって僕はずっとみんなと一緒に遊びたかったから、これくらいでは遊び足りないのです。もっともっと遊びますですよ。
元気だな。ところで羽生さ、その頭のそれ遊んでて落ちちゃわないのか
Hanyu has horns on her head. I thought that it was a hair accessory of sorts, so I didn't want her to lose it while playing. I was going to offer to hold it for her for a while while she ran around, but Hanyu's face clouded over, and she apologetically held onto the horns. Yeah, like, what is the deal with those? I mean, we've been questioning like this whole spirit thing that you're dealing with, Hanyu. But even if we were to say that, oh, you are a spirit of the past, like maybe like one of the older generations of Furudes, like maybe the one of the earlier ancient like generation of Furudes that existed a long time ago, since ancient Japan or something like that. Why the horse? Like, where are they coming from?
圭一、羽生のは取れませんのです。
あ、そうなのか？変なこと言ってごめん。
やっぱり角なんかがあるとおかしいでしょうか。おかしくなんかないよ。キュートでかいよ。
そうそう。ケイちゃんなんか股間に角が生えてるしね。硬くて反り返ったのが。股間の角
ってなんだろう。相変わらずレナさんのパンチだけは見切れませんわね。
Okay. Well, I won't lie when I say... Again, I'm bringing up Yumineko. Bear with me a little bit, folks, but it certainly reminds me of one character from Yumineko. A more spiritual / metaphysical kind of character that has like these horns, kinda, on their head. And there is like a meta-narrative explanation for that. There's even like a, I mean, maybe not meta explanation. They were never explained, but there is like a theory behind why that character has those kinds of horns. Which, well, I guess it would be spoiler to talk about it, so I don't think I'm gonna be able to talk about that here. So, I'm sorry, but there is some explanation that you can give for those kinds of horns, and I don't know if this is the same thing here as well. I don't think so.
大丈夫ですの、ミオンさん。顔面がへこんでますわよ。
Everyone left except Hanyu, who didn't seem to get it. I shouldn't have said anything. I bet she doesn't like to talk about her horns. But if I try to apologize, I think things will get even more complicated. As I thought about what to say, Renan took the girls over to the shrine gate.
気にしなくていいのですよ、ケイチ。羽生も気にしないようにしているのですが、まだ修行が足りないということなのです。
She hasn't had enough training.
やっぱ気にしてたんだな。すまん、これからは気をつけるぜ。
羽生は大昔にこのひなみ沢にやってきました。
あ、やっぱりそうだったんだ。だよな。村の中のことを転校生にしちゃ随分詳しかったしな。
羽生がひなみ沢に住む前、どこに住んでいたのかはよく知りません。
I asked her once, but all she said was it was a place I wouldn't understand. Hanyu said that she, or rather, Hanyu's people, couldn't live there anymore. They looked for a new place to live for a long time. They traveled a very long way before arriving in Hinamizawa. There was a beautiful swamp in the area, and that was exactly what Hanyu's people were looking for. But there was a village nearby where people lived. To show respect to the original inhabitants of an area was low among wandering people like Hanyu's. Her clan decided to live peacefully and coexist with the villagers. However, their attempts to coexist didn't go so well. The villagers were too childish and immature to accept these newcomers. They strongly rejected them and caused a terrible, tragic disaster. Hanyu said she took their form, and descended upon this land in order to subdue the disaster. However, she just couldn't hide her horns. The forbidden ancient documents say that Hanyu descended into the Furude shrine, appearing as she does today. It also states the following: Hanyu's people can't live anywhere other than this village. They can also only live by coexisting with the villagers. Okay, so this was something that was told like a long time ago. Demons have been found by the villagers of Hinamizawa, and at the time there was a little bit of conflict. That is, until Oyashiro decided to make like a pact / peace between like the two between the two forms of people, like the Hinamizawa villagers and like the demons as such, to make peace between them. That would be Hanyu. I mean, we talked plenty about the Oyashiro in this, and well, Oyashiro is Hanyu. I think that's pretty much like the understanding in this. The Furude Shrine's priest once rejected them, claiming that coexistence was impossible if mixing with the wandering people's blood caused the villagers to become demons. But the young heir of the Furude Shrine fell in love with Hanyu, and when their child was born, the priest had to reconsider. Oh, wandering people who cannot hide your horns, if you wish to settle in this land, if you wish to sell with our blood, then I shall consider granting your wish. However, as the demon's blood mixed with the villagers, it became hard to tell who was human and who was demon. The villagers began to cast suspicion on one another, haunted by that paranoia. Unless all of that was resolved, coexistence would be impossible. For you and us to coexist, we must lay down several laws for us to follow. They will be very strict. I am very, very sorry for imposing these upon you who have lived in peace until now. However, as long as those rules are followed, the village will be free from demonic disaster. Demonic disaster? That is... Okay, so I guess it's official. They are demons. I mean... if they're calling themselves demons? Very well. The rules will be followed. But much blood has already been shed in the village. The anger, sins, and corruption people bear cannot be cleansed. The one law of the human world is that sins are atoned for with life. I see. If you say it's your way to let someone take on all the responsibility and bury the sins with him, then we'll do that. However, wouldn't people end up pushing responsibility on each other? Because nobody wants to die? Exactly. That's the ugly demon in the world, man. No one will accept their own sins, but only foist them onto each other. Since they can only clear the balance with their lives, everyone refuses to play. Everyone refuses to pay. And the sins just keep adding up. Without cleansing them, they stagnate, and people cast them upon each other forever, doubting each other and passing them around. I see. If that is the unopposable law of this world, and you yourselves are troubled by this law, then in exchange for coexisting with us, I shall grant you a world where people do not blame their sins on each other. What kind of world is it? So long as mankind exists, they will commit sins and give rise to corruption. How could that all be erased without foisting it onto someone else? Let me bear all the sins and corruption born from man, and purify my soul. Let all sins rest not with man. If they are born upon myself, then men will not need to force them onto each other. What are you saying? Are you really going to make yourself into a sacrifice? Someone has to take on the sins, otherwise they won't be cleansed. That's the law of your world, isn't it? A different ancient document also states the following. Of course, it's a forbidden one too. Only the head of the Furude family is allowed to read it. Nobody else. Not even the other heads of the 3 families. It tells that unrest grew in people's minds, that the villagers' evil hearts collected in the swamp and gave rise to demons. The Fruited Shrine's priest explained that the root of all evil is the demon god of the swamp, and led the young villagers there. By the swamp, they found the demon mocking the unrest in people's hearts. The young villagers fought bravely, captured the demon, and dragged it to the Fruited Shrine. The priest cleansed the demon god, opened her abdomen, and dragged out her organs. Oh. He chopped them up and washed them down the stream, then threw the body in the swamp. Okay. Well, there is some similarity to how Rika dies because of Takano. I guess Takano sees Rika as the demon god. Then people regained their sanity. Those who had been suspicious of each other became a friend, and they all shared in the joy of peace again. If these forbidden ancient dogments are real, then the object of the villagers' worship, Oyashiro-sama, was captured by the villagers, forced to bear all their sins, and torn to death. Plus, it's clearly written that the demons appeared after unrest grew in people's hearts. In other words, the demons were forced to bear the sin of discord that rested with men long before they arrived. Oyashiro-sama was a god who took on people's sins to mend conflicts between them. People eventually came to honor her, and it's said that became the foundation of faith in Oyashiro-sama. I don't understand exactly what that means, but I know one thing. When none of us humans would draw the losing straw, she offered to draw it in our stead. To prove it, we cleansed our filth by letting cotton absorb it, and drifted down the stream during the Watanagashi festival. There is no shame or shifting of responsibility involved. Until the system was created, we were simply demons who pushed our filth and our responsibility on each other. We could only cleanse our own sins by blaming someone else and sacrificing him by cutting open his abdomen. And Hanyu took on that job. A purification ceremony without a human life. A system that forgives people for their sins. That is the origin of the cult of Oyashiro-sama, which blames not people for their sins, but the curse. Those documents were sealed away. If they weren't, people would find out that the object of their own faith was falsely blamed and killed by their own ancestors. Hanyu apologizes. She takes in people's sins and keeps apologizing. When people can't deal with their own sins anymore, she accepts them. When Hanyu takes over, people are cleansed, and they are all allowed to keep living. Demons take on sins by becoming cotton to absorb them. They are exterminated and washed down the stream, and then the village is forgiven. They are forgiven for their sins. If that's all true, then Hanyu, or rather Oyashiro-sama, such a tragic existence. Yeah, I mean, Hanyu is a living being too. I mean, yeah, sure, people are not sacrificing each other for the sake of, like, just for the sake of getting rid of their sins, but they're instead now they're getting rid of the sins by pushing it onto Hanyu herself, which that's bad too. Like, Hanyu herself has taken on that role to take away the sins of men. And, you know, on one hand, the idea of cleansing their own sins by pushing it onto the cotton to be drifted away into the swamp, it is a better alternative than fucking sacrificing, like, their people, like tribal people, just pushing a person onto a table and then just pulling their guts out and telling to God, we shall sacrifice this random ass person for the sake of being forgiven by our sins, which is bullshit. Which, you know, the idea of using the cotton to expel their sins, it is a pretty good idea. But on the other hand, Hanyu herself has to take on to those sins herself instead, which pretty much sucks. I've asked Hanyu about this before. Then she told me the following story. 4 people are stuck in a snowy mountain cabin. They play a game where each sit in one of the 4 corners. It's a fairly well-known story. It's in the middle of the winter. They're all getting sleepy. If they fall asleep, they'll die. What the fuck? So one of them comes up with an idea. They're sitting in the 4 corners of the room, so someone just has to walk all clockwise to the next corner and wake up the person sitting in that corner. The one who just walked will sit in that corner, and the one who just woke up will get up, walk to the next corner, and wake up the person sitting there. If they keep doing that, nobody will fall asleep. Wait, what the fuck? They're sitting in the 4 corners. Wake up the person sitting in that corner. If they fall asleep, they'll die. The one who just walked will sit in the corner, and the one who just woke up will get up, walk to the next corner, and wake up the person sitting there. If they keep doing that, nobody will fall asleep. Okay, so if all of them fall asleep, they'll all die. As long as one person is awake while the others are sleeping, that's still fine. Okay, because otherwise, they are still sleeping. Even if one of them wakes up and all that, and they do this cycle, like, as long as they're fully asleep, they're gonna die. But no, as long as one person is still awake, they're not gonna die. Okay. I assume that's how it works. People who know this story won't need an explanation. But this doesn't work with 4 people. When the first person gets up, their corner becomes empty. So after everyone takes turns, the 4th person goes to the next corner, which is an empty one. They sit down and fall asleep, so the game is over right there. Everyone freezes to death. In other words, to play this game, you need more than 4 people. You need one more person in order to be saved. People usually tell this as a ghost story. They usually say that this was actually a group of 5 people, but one was already dead, and thanks to that ghost, they're able to continue living until the next morning. Hanyu once told me that she is like that 5th person. If she can make everything run smoothly by joining a circle of people, then it's very similar to how the telephone game in the mountain cabin manages to function without break. Hanyu can complete a circle that can't be realized by people alone. Then those people can live peaceful. She is an existence that completes a circle. Is she bothered by her horns because it reminds her of the time when she was called a demon and punished for the sins she took in? Is her subconscious still tormenting her with thoughts that those who have horns ought to be persecuted?
あの角は生まれつきです。それを意味嫌われ、いじめられたこともありましたのです。
そうなんか？そりゃますます悪いことを言っちまったな。
そして羽生はその角があるがゆえに全ての罪を引き受け、生産するというとても大きなお役目を引き受け、全うし神と崇められたのです。
え？神？
僕の独り言なのです。忘れて大丈夫なのですよ。
Ah, come on, Rika. Like, what is this half truth, half secrecy right over here at this point in time? At this point in the story. I feel like you should just tell, like, everything that it is in your heart when it comes to Hanyu. I mean, we already did. I get the thing that you should be transparent about what you think about Hanyu. Instead of just going, Forget about it. Nobody knows who Hanyu really is. Is she really a divine existence that descended from a higher place? Or is she simply an unlucky girl who became a sacrifice just because she had a pair of horns? Nobody knows. Nobody, not even Hanyu? But this girl's blood was blended with the Furuta family's blood, and that blood has descended into me. Our legends state that if the Furuta family has a girl for their firstborn child, for 8 generations in a row, that 8th child would be a reincarnation of Ayashiro-san. I don't know exactly what that means, but I'm that 8th generation. Is that why I was the only person who could see Hanyu? 8 generations is a very long time. Maybe that's how long it took for all the sins Hanyu assumed to be cleared. 8 represents infinity. It's a very lucky number. Often curses uttered will contain, "I'll curse you for 7 generations." But the 8th lies beyond that. In other words, 8 possesses such a good fortune that it can forgive great curses and sins that span 7 generations. It's a number with power. It's a time Hanyu needed to cleanse all the sins she took in from the humans. Hold on a second. Well, hold on. I feel like I need to read this like a bunch of times in order to understand. Like there is a thing about this 8th generation, and when we talked about this, like plenty throughout the story, that the 8th generation girl of the Furuta family will be the reincarnation of Ayashiro. And, well, there is precedence to this, because otherwise Hanyu would have interacted with Rika's mother, for example. Like, you would think that Hanyu would be able to interact with each generation of the Furutas, but apparently not. Because otherwise, like you would think that Rika's mother would have went through something similar to Rika, but no. Apparently Rika's mother was just a typical, like, human that hasn't experienced like any of this supernatural stuff. But because Rika is possibly the 8th generation of the Furuta, she is able to not only sense Hanyu, but also experience this sort of fragmental loop or something like that. It could very well be possible that Hanyu has tried her best to interact with Rika's mother in the past, but she couldn't. But once Rika was born, she was able to interact with Rika specifically. It can forgive great curses and sins that spanned 7 generations. So, if I'm to understand, like, whatever is going on right over here, because it's beyond me for right now, like, what all this means. But what it basically tells me that for like 7 generations, like 8 generations, like there is a cycle, like generations, because there's probably like more than just 8 generations of the Furutas. Like each 8 cycles of generations, there's going to be an accumulation of the sins that the village takes. And now that we reached Rika, and Hanyu is able to be seen by Rika, this is the perfect time for the sins of the village to be cleansed and all that. And thus, Hanyu is going to be rejuvenated with power. And the cycle will once again begin from now on. Like after Rika dies and there's going to be like a new generation of Furutas, like this is the moment of purification, and from then on, sins will continue to collect until the new 8th generation, the far into the future, when once again Hanyu is going to be able to regain her powers and cleanse the sins of the village, like over and over and over. It's a cycle of purification of the sins and all that, I think. Hanyu and her people simply wanted to coexist with us. but Hanyu had to become a sacrifice. Her stomach was cut open and its contents washed down the streets. Then she was thrown into the swamp. And so, the Furita family has been waiting. They waited for a very long time for her to come back. They kept our traditions alive, waiting forever and ever for her return. According to the legend, the name Furita was made by adding a horn to the character for a fortune teller. Oh, okay, pretty interesting. The Furita family rose when Hanyu's bloodline was combined with that of human beings. Hanyu is the ancestor of the Furita family, as well as the mother of us all. When I was little, Hanyu taught me a lot more things than my mother did. It's no wonder. I am her descendant. The curse on the clan who exorcised and buried their very own mother was finally absolved after 8 generations, what seemed like an eternity. And then she met me, her descendant, the final generation of the Furita family. Sometimes when I think about that, I feel like there must be some important meaning to this hapless fate thrust upon. But what kind of meaning could the trial I face, the trial of breaking through the obstacles sealing my fate, have upon the curse that plagued Hanyu and the Furita family for over a millennium? I mean, that is a good point. Like, excluding, like, the story of Hanyu and her clan, why is it that Rika has to go through this fragmental loop? Like, it could very well be that, like what I was talking about before, about the accumulation of the sins throughout the 8 generations and all that. Like, with so much of these sins that the village has accumulated up to this point, that signifies the destruction of the village. And Rika's job, alongside Hanyu, it is to cleanse the sins of the village. And if they don't manage to do that, that means the destruction of the village. On a realistic sense, we have to stop Takano from destroying the village. But on a symbolic level, at the same time, we're trying to purify the village. Whatever the fuck that means. Like, what are we supposed to do to purify the village? I don't know. But the point is that we're trying to purify the village in order to not have it be destroyed by the weight of these sins. That's what I'm understanding from this. And until we go through these fragments to finally find that solution, the village is gonna keep getting destroyed. 1,000 years is simply too long a period to communicate thoughts and intentions correctly. Hanyu has become the curse we call Oyashiro-sama. Though she originally was a means of salvation, she has become a chain that binds people. Now, why is it that we keep getting these chances to try to purify the village? I don't know. It feels like we're getting like quite a good deal right over here. Because otherwise, it will be just Rika being the 8th generation of the Furude who has given the task to purify the village. Otherwise, the village is going to get destroyed and that's it. But something in the universe is giving us this chance to repeat this over and over and over until we finally cleanse the village and not have it be destroyed. Is it Hanyu who is giving us this power? Could well be. I mean, thank God. Otherwise, the village would be destroyed and that's the end of it. That's the end of the story. Like, where is this coming from? The rules about coexisting were misinterpreted as a law that binds villagers to this place, and that continued until the Meiji era. And while the village winds once again blow toward the misunderstanding of isolation thanks to the damn conflict, how does that play into my meeting with Hanyu and this motley fate we're trapped in? I haven't lived long enough to be able to understand that. The only thing I can say for sure is that the Furude family originated when Hanyu's bloodline mixed with that of humans. And the line's final descendant, me, finally met with its ancestor. The Furuta bloodline bears a cursed history of placing all of man's sins onto its mother and killing her. Now, the beginning and end of that line have met. Hanyu always wanted to join everyone. Yet she couldn't hide her horns. Even so, she still wished to be an existence that completes a circle. It's a child's job to bury their parents. But mother, I never heard that it's a child's job to kill and bury their parents. Don't ask, child. I'm not human. My horns are proof that I'm a demon. A demon's job is to take on the calamities of the human world. Bearing the calamities of this chaotic world and cleansing the unrest in mankind's hearts is my role. Then mother, why do you have to be the one? People's sins are people's sins. They aren't yours. Listen, child. People live with their sins. They can't live without making someone else take the blame. Nobody wants to take the blame, so they shift their responsibility around. That is a demon, the true demon disrupting the role of man. By bearing it myself, men may be cleansed, and mankind can be freed from their destiny of doubt and conflict. Let all the sins, the filth, the karma, and the curse come to me. Then attack me, purify, wash me down the stream, and throw me in the swamp. A human will not do, so it is the fate of one not human to accept that role. If a human were made to bear it, then mankind would not be freed from the demon of doubt. I don't understand. Mother. Mother, you have horns. Are you saying that you aren't human just because you have horns? That even if you are human, the horns make you non-human? Even if you have horns, you're human to me. My child, you're the only one who's ever said that. Even if everyone else calls me X or X, you still call me human. What is passed down in the Furuda's many forbidden schools, the ones unknown to even the heads of the three families, sealed in the altar in the shrine storage. Understanding that will probably require about as much time as I've spent repeating time. Even once you understand that, perhaps you'll better understand the smile Hanyu wears as she innocently plays with everyone. Whoa. Man, that was quite a segment right over there. I cannot say that I understood like all of it, but maybe in time. Like Christ, it is something that not even Rika understands, like, after all this time. So, I guess so. I heard Mion yell in surprise. Something must have happened.
なんだどうしたんだ
羽生さんがそこでふざけてて、転んで斜面を転げ落ちていったんですわ。羽生ちゃん、大丈夫？
綺麗に転がってったけど、捻挫とかしてないかな。
She rolled beautifully. What does that even mean?
行こう行こう。
Hanyu had been playing on the slope and tumbled down. There's a road just below the slope. Mion and the others went down the stairs together. Let's go. I hope she isn't injured. Nah, she's gonna be fine. When I got there, I saw Tomitake-san and Takano-san. They were taking care of her. Oh.
これはどういうことなんだい?
Well, looky. It's Bonnie and... Oh, okay. I guess I cannot say Bonnie and Clyde anymore. Since we know their nature.
急に彼女が転がり落ちてきてね。
ずいぶん綺麗に転がってきたわね。
I guess you could say it is just Bonnie.
でも、 頭をゴチンとやってしまったみたいだから、後でコブになってしまうかもね。よく冷やしておいた方がいいわよ。
羽生私たちの声が聞こえます？ほら、指は何本に見えますの？
She sounded disoriented, but didn't appear to be injured. What a relief for everyone. I bet she's just feeling dizzy from rolling.
でもよかったね。怪我がなくて。
いやはや。しかし、転がってった先に看護師さんがいてくれたなんてできすぎだね。
あら、非番の時の私は野鳥撮影家なのよ。ねえ、二郎さん。
まあね、そういうことさ。
まあ、ひなみざわっこなら、このくらいで怪我はできねえよな。
Yeah, I mean, especially a club member.
羽生も、もう立派なひなみざわの仲間ってことだぜ。
羽生ちゃんっていうの？見かけない子ね。新しいお友達？
ええ、そうですわよ。月曜日に転校してきたばかりなんですのよ。
これ、何？変わってるわね。おもちゃ？
Takano-san tried to poke at one of Hanyu's horns. They'd be an interesting hair accessory, if they were an accessory.
それは羽生ちゃんのチャームポイントなので、取っちゃダメなんです。
あら、そうなの？
Wait, so does it hurt? When you touch them, are they sensible?
私はあまり可愛くないと思うんだけど。だってほら。化け物。みたいじゃない？
Suddenly, Hanyu moaned as if suffocating.
高野、羽生は化け物じゃありませんです。二度と言ったら許さないのです。
そうだよ、高野さん。人の趣味に悪いよ。
ごめんなさいね。決してそんなつもりはなかったんだけど。
Rika-chan said it rather firmly. I'm sure Hanyu doesn't want to hear that word. Sometimes Takano-san says things in a derogatory way without realizing herself. Oh, I think that she does. She does. But I guess there are things you can't or shouldn't say. Hanyu was looking at Takano-san with a complicated look on her face. After seeing that expression, Takano-san realized she might have hurt her feelings. She apologized and left with Tomitake-san.
大丈夫？羽生、綺麗に転げ落ちたから、大して怪我はないそうです。
Landed beautifully.
リカ、今の人、今の人？高野ですよ。高野。
Hanyu repeated Takao-san's name. All of a sudden, I grew worried that she hit her head or something. Hanyu stood straight up and grabbed Rika-chan's collar.
リカ！高野です！高野！そうですよ。高野ですよ。
Okay, so I guess what I'm understanding right over here is that unfortunately Rika doesn't remember, like, from the get-go that Takano was the killer and the one who destroyed the village. Unfortunately, it's not as if her memories have come back to her, like, right now, unfortunately. Which means that I hope that she's gonna be able to remember as soon as possible. I mean, we have to, no matter what. Hanyu, however, she does know. She remembers.
違う、リカ。高野です、高野。覚えてないのですか？
知ってるわよ。高野美代でしょ。入江診療所の。
思い出せないのですか？
ごめん、羽生。何の話？
リカ、そんな。
And this is the last one. The last one. She finally imprinted herself with the true enemy's name, while enduring the pain of her stomach being cut open. And yet she can't remember. Rika Furude has failed to inherit the memory of the fragments. Yeah, that's what I was waiting to see. For right now, she doesn't remember. But yeah, I guess so. I guess to repeat what I was saying before, it kind of will be that in similar fashion to Rika. Hi, Oishi. To continue what I was saying before getting interrupted by a very excited Oishi right over here, it kind of will be that she, like, up until now, she couldn't remember who was the main enemy in similar fashion to Rika. Otherwise, it doesn't really make sense, because if she did remember each time, she could have just helped the Rika in remembering that sort of stuff, but no.
ご無沙汰しておりますよ。
大石さん。
Hey, Akasaka.
その後もお変わりなく。
おかわりなくなんてひどいですな。最近リンゴダイエットってのを始めましてね。ちょいと体重が絞れてきたつもりだったんですがね。そういう赤坂さんはこれまた見違えるくらいたくましくなったじゃないですか。
この程度には鍛えてないと体が持ちませんので。
あれ、クラちゃん、その人あの人かい？何年か前にうちに来た東京の公安の。
本田屋さん、ご無沙汰しております。その節はお世話になりました。
あんた随分とまあ立派に成長しちゃったじゃないですか。かあ、若いっていいね。
さあさあさあ、せっかく来てくれたんです。もうお店に行っちゃいましょう。馴染みの店ですからのれん前でも入れてくれるでしょう。さあさあ行きましょう。
大石さん、いいんですか？まだ勤務時間中じゃないんですか？
何言ってんですか。東京本庁からいらっしゃられた特命刑事との特別研修ですよ。さあさあ行きましょう。ああ、ちょいと先に電話してきます。赤坂さんに比べたらカモネギみたいな連中ですがね。ちょいとメンツを揃えまして。ああ、いいところに。クマちゃん、今夜バチッとポンチしに行きませんか？
大石さん、本当に変わっておられませんね。
Akasaka used to think Oishi wasn't serious enough about work, but after experiencing many different things in the real world, that preconception had completely disappeared. Oishi is that way because of his experience. It's not always best to take things seriously. In this world, sometimes being that frank can help. In Akasaka's case, people often tell him to relax more. But in Oishi's case, maybe he should straighten out a little.
Sasa, Akasaka-san, ikimashou.
Alright, let's go for some more mahjong.
ええ、参りましょう。
いい返事です。だいぶベテランの余裕ができてきました。そうでなくちゃ。
The old Akasaka would have thought Oishi was making fun of him, but by now he could take it as an honest assessment.
赤坂さんもずいぶん強くなりましたね。なんだかお酒じゃ勝てない気がしてきましたよ。いやー、オイルと酒に弱くなるってのは本当ですな。
ご謙遜を。それに私が強いのは情報収集が下戸では務まらないからです。ちゃんと予算を切って常に若手と特訓してますから。日本酒、洋酒、紹興酒、のれんをくぐることもあればミラーボールのお店の時もありますよ。
なそりゃいい、そりゃいい。今度ぜひ私も高知に参りますよ。
ええ、ぜひ享受してやってください。最近の若いのは自分は生まれつき飲めないとかひよったことばかり言ってますよ。私だって最初は全然ダメでしたがね。酒は飲めば飲むほどに強くなり、ますますに旨味がわかるようになるんです。
そうです、そうです。聞いてますか、クマちゃん。
面目ないっす。これでもだいぶ強くなったんですよ。
そうだの。大石と組まされたばかりの頃はお前乾杯からウーロン茶だったからの。
それはいけない。乾杯は重要な意味があるんです。そこでアルコールを飲まないというのは自分はこの飲み会に福があるって言ってるようなもんなんです。だから私はそんなことする若手どもにはきっちり指導してますよ。一気飲みしろって言ってんじゃない。とにかく最初の一杯だけは中ジョッキ。
When Akasaka first came to Okinomiya, he was very nervous, but there was no trace of that tension left in him. Seeing that, Oishi realized just how much Akasaka had learned in the past few years.
よっ、赤坂さんかっこいい。
Chug, 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 chug.
いや、もう本当に頼もしくなっちゃいましたね。私にとっては定年までの残り数年でしかなかった間に赤坂さんはこれほどたくましく成長したんですから。いやいや、老兵は去るべきだと痛感します。
そんなことはないです。私も嫌になるくらい経験がものを言う世界というのを勉強しました。力仕事や現場仕事なんかは私たち若造に任せて、大石さんのようなベテランにはぜひデスクで胸を張ってこき使ってもらいたいもんです。
ですってよ。聞いてますか、クマちゃん。
いたたたたたたた、すいません、すいません。頑張るっす。
大石、熊谷君も頑張っちょるぞい。めんどくさがりのお前さんに代わってよくまめに歩き回っとる。
大石さんはめちゃくちゃな人でしょ。私が大石さんと組んだのはほんの数日間だったんですが、あなたの気持ちもよくわかりますよ。でもね、大石さんがきっとあなたを鍛えてくれますから、最後まで信じてついていってください。
わかりました。頑張るっす。でもお酒は鍛えられても麻雀までは無理っすよ。かみさんに給料を渡す前に大石さんに取られるんです。
だよ。
いや、麻雀も経験なんです。打った場数が強さと自信になるんですよ。後でご一緒しましょう。まずは負けない打ち方を伝授します。
大石、いい若者だの。お前さんが無茶やってた頃にちょっとだけ似とるの。
まさかまさか、私はこんな2枚目じゃありませんでしたから。
Nah. You kidding? It was unusual for Oishi to enjoy anyone's company this much. Akasaka and Oishi only worked together for a few days. But oh boy, those were some memorable days. They had exchanged some holiday cards since, but that was about it. Oishi had no idea how happy it would make him to see such a green whore grow into a dependable cop. Oishi always thought he wanted to be active until the day he retired. But after seeing such a dependable colleague, he began to think that maybe it was time for him to step down. No, not yet. Like, maybe past June, but for right now, you're still doing something. Oishi Nakasaka enjoyed their reunion more than they thought they would.